Vinay Sahasrabuddhe of the Indian Council for Cultural Relations to shed light on the essence of our topic, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The floor is yours.
His Excellency, the President of the United Nations General Assembly, Mr. Dennis Francis, former Minister of Environment and Climate Change, Government of India, our dear friend Suresh Prabhu, Madam Srimati Sumitra Tai Mahajan, former Speaker of India's Lok Sabha, the lower house of the Parliament, Ambassador Vijay Nambiar, Madam Ruchira Kamboj, Permanent Representative of Bharat at the United Nations, Shri Kumar Tuhin, Director General of the Indian Council for Cultural Relations, Excellencies, other dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen. सबसे पहले मैं आपका इस सम्मेलन में हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूं और आपके प्रति आभार भी व्यक्त करता हूं. It's a matter of great pleasure and also a privilege to deliver this keynote address at this conference on Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, or the world as one family. It is also very natural for the Indian Council for Cultural Relations and the permanent mission of India to join hands in organizing this conference. As we all know, in a different sense of the term, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is not just permanent, but perhaps eternal mission of India, and cultural relations are the vehicles to accomplish this mission. It is historic that Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is being discussed where it requires to be discussed. And the times are also such that we need to discuss this. In fact, there is perhaps no better way to articulate the organizational mission of the United Nations than Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Recently, this theme, loosely translated in English as One Earth, One Family, One Future, came into prominence because this was the motto of India G20 presidency. However, the relevance of this theme is eternal and universal. While in the precincts of the headquarters of the United Nations, I remember what Prime Minister Narendra Modi had said while delivering his first address to the United Nations General Assembly in 2014. In his maiden speech, Prime Minister Modi raised a particular point. While we speak of an interdependent world, have we become more united as nations? Why can't we have a G-all grouping? Prime Minister Modi had asked. His call for G-all was nothing but the re-articulation of our collective aspiration to make the entire global community a true one family, that is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Friends, in this keynote address, I will be first taking an overview of India's worldview and the inherent centrality of the philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, while I will be reflecting upon some unique characteristics of the philosophy of India, reviewing its global role in developmental and humanitarian issues. I will be leaving issues of global peacekeeping and climate justice to the experts to reflect upon, as there are going to be independent panel discussions covering these aspects. Ladies and gentlemen, India is a civilizational nation, and family is the primary social institution that has helped sustain our society for centuries together. In its history of several millennia, India braved invasions after invasions, natural calamities like famines and floods, earthquakes and pandemics. And yet, if the onward march of our society has continued unstoppably, the credit goes to our social institutions, particularly our family. With togetherness as the main pillar of the traditional social institution of ours, commitment to this philosophy of fraternity continues to be reflected in our approaches to global issues today as well. Since times immemorial in India, it has been a part of our conviction that India is not just a mass of land. India is a living organism. India is a nation with a mission, and this has been the case even in the past. This mission of India is beautifully explained in our scriptures like Garuda Purana, the last verse of which says, Sarvesham Mangalam Bhuyat, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kashchit Dukha Bhag Bhavet. Obviously then, India's life mission has been well-being of the entire humanity. Prime Minister Modi had once eloquently mentioned that India has not attacked anyone. It is neither hungry for any territory. He further had also pointed out that in 2 world wars in which India practically had no direct stakes, 1.5 lakh Indian soldiers had laid down their lives fighting for others, not for no reason. Michel Danino, a French educationist and writer who has made India his home, was prompted to enlist few things that India did not contribute to the world. And what are they? Michel Danino tells us that the list includes, and I quote, war of religion, colonial conquest, slave trade, genocides, concentration camps, and world wars. Universal peace for us is truly an article of faith. Although much is said about Indian nationalism, the idea of nationalism in India was never about narrow-mindedness. It was natural, therefore, for Swami Vivekananda, 130 years before, to deliver his iconic speech beginning with Sisters and Brothers of America at the Parliament of World's Religions in Chicago on 11 September 1893, and that had really captivated the audience, as we know. History of India manifests in myriad ways the idea of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, or the world as one family. This approach is evident in the way Parsi community, originally from Persia, was given shelter in India, more particularly in Gujarat. It is also evident in the writings of Yuan Tsang, Fahiyan, and Al-Biruni. It is also evident in the writings of even Russian visitor to India, Afasani Nikitin. The way King Zamorin welcomed Vasco da Gama when the latter landed in Calicut reflected the same spirit. Tibetans and Bangladeshis given shelter when situations forced them move out of their homelands is also testimony to India's approach to humanitarian issues. Again, the idea that the global community constitute our kith and kin made Indians happily settle down in countries like Fiji, Suriname, Mauritius, etc., where they had originally gone as laborers. What Mahatma Gandhi did to fight against the system of racial discrimination in South Africa before joining India's freedom struggle was also reflective of the same spirit. It is therefore obvious that Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam cannot be seen as a standalone doctrinal approach of India. It is inherent to India's world view. In a way, Indians can look at the entire global community as their own family because of their firm belief that all spiritual paths finally converge into one fundamental truth, as suggested by our scriptures in Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti, a verse from Rig Veda. The literal meaning of Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti is truth or ultimate reality is one. Sage call it by many names. Acceptance of this fundamental truth helps one move beyond all apparent differences and diversities. It is this conviction, friends, that has defined India's democratic approach in spiritual matters. We have always believed in the notion, let 1,000 flowers bloom, and rejected any monopolistic view of spirituality, lock, stock, and barrel. Acceptance of this principle that truth is one and manifestations are diverse has been the key to peaceful coexistence of innumerable communities, languages, and traditions in a country like India, which could be called as a living example of what now the global community calls as multiculturalism. In fact, it would not be out of place to mention here that while in the context of level playing field for economic development, Flattening of the world should be welcomed, but the entire global community will be culturally poorer if we accept cultural flattening and unmindfully ape lives and styles of the rich societies and wealthy countries. This trend will prove to be detrimental to the very beauty of the entire world. Ladies and gentlemen, since language is the vehicle of culture, it is important that global governance is taken to every nook and corner in the world in a language that locals can understand. I would mention it here, especially in the presence of Honorable President of the General Assembly, that while local needs to think global, global also needs to be mindful of the local. That alone would help the cause of universal fraternity and fellow feeling. This principle of unity, not just in, but of our diversity, is also central to the integrationist philosophy embedded in India's worldview. Like individuality and collectivism, our diversity and unity are, mark my words, not mutually exclusive. Our diversity is in fact nothing else but the diverse manifestations of our innate unity. For India, therefore, it was very natural to politely turn down the idea of observing 1995 as the International Year of Indigenous People. Under the Prime Ministership of Shri P.V. Narasimha Rao, India convincingly argued that in our country, all are indigenous, and hence a special celebration is entirely irrelevant. The family model told in Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is essentially based on emotional connect. Remember, the scriptures talk of family and not society, grouping, or home, because as against all these, family is about give and take, participation, and partnership. Simply saying staying under one roof doesn't necessarily make a family. Sharing is the foundational value of the concept of family. Hence, when we say Kutumbakam, it is all about mutuality, respect, sacrifice, and togetherness. Also inherent to the Indian model of family, it's striking of a fine balance between individuality and collectivism. Indian family doesn't have only aunts and uncles, remember. It has a particular nomenclature for every individual relationship. Indian family respects both individual freedom and also values collectivism. In India, we say, prapte tu shodasya varshe, putram mitra vadacharet, meaning when he or she reaches the age of 16, parents should treat their children like a friend. In a way, this approach defines our traditional youth policy. Friends, the Bhagavad Gita reflects the spirit of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam in many verses. Gita clearly states that the ideal as being able to see everyone in oneself and oneself in everyone. When this feeling is deep-rooted in one's inner consciousness, it naturally leads to broadening of one's approach and widening of horizons. When one enlarges the idea of family, it is natural that we tend to take more care of those members who need more attention, like what we do in our families. Within the global community, India has also been trying to provide leadership to developing countries in diverse spheres through multiple ways. Today, we are in the era of attention economy, and visibility has become the driver of global narratives. Obviously then, it was natural for India to try and give voice to the voiceless, whether to the most developing countries, smaller countries, or countries that are generally considered as invisible since they belong to the global south. Incidentally, there is a striking similarity in approaches to issues of many cultures in global south. Africa's philosophy of Ubuntu, which means I am because we are, also highlights inherent interdependence of our existence. India's strong advocacy of greater democratization of global governance, including the United Nations, must be seen in this context. Friends, unlike any other institution, family is a continuously evolving institution. Like India, family as an institution is ever aging but never old. The underlying principle is that of Nitya Nutana chirapuratan. Generations change, but families continue. Many initiatives of India at the United Nations reflect this continuity, and through that, an attempt to add some distinct value to the functional agenda of this global body. Through co-sponsoring the landmark 1960 Declaration of UN on granting of independence to colonial countries and peoples, which proclaimed the need to unconditionally end colonialism in all its forms and manifestations, India achieved this goal. India was also elected the first chair of the Decolonization Committee, where its ceaseless efforts to put an end to colonialism have been lauded by all. Even during the early years of United Nations, I'm sure all are aware, India had taken active part in drafting the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, highlighting the need for reflecting gender equality by changing the language of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights from all men are created equal to all men and women are created equal. This was not a small contribution. Two latest examples of how well-being of the global community has acquired centrality in Indian initiatives at the UN are Declaration of June 21 as International Day of Yoga and Declaration of 2023 as the International Year of Millets by the Food and Agriculture Organization. Through these, again, India has given an essential message of the need for marrying our cultural traditions to lifestyle-generated challenges of wellness. Friends, develop and let others develop has been India's approach towards what could rightly be described as development diplomacy. Indian initiatives in establishing International Solar Alliance and a global body for traditional medicinal systems are reflective of our democratic approach towards developmental issues. Take the example of digital economy. India has topped the list of digital payments and recorded 89.5 million transactions in 2022. Interestingly, India's payments are more than the digital payments made in the next 4 leading countries combined. India has happily shared its UPI technology with many countries, including France, Australia, Singapore, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, and others. A successful and vibrant democracy, India is helping countries in the flawless conduct of elections. India has given technical support related to the electronic voting machines to Jordan, Maldives, Namibia, Egypt, Bhutan, and Nepal. India has always been a knowledge society, and Indian institutions are now going places. Many private Indian universities have already established their campuses abroad. Now, the first Indian Institute of Technology campus outside the country will be set up in Tanzania, as everybody knows. With teacher-taught relationship as the centerpiece of educational philosophy of India, schools run by Indian spiritual organizations are becoming increasingly popular all over the world. Again, under India's Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program, popularly known as ITEC program, over 2 lakh professionals from 161 partner countries have benefited since 1964. I am happy to mention here that the Indian Council for Cultural Relations awards scholarships to approximately 4,000 students annually from 140 countries across the world. Friends, right since independence, India has always served the cause of humanity. Although India's partition was mainly at the behest of religious fundamentalists and hence on religious grounds, India opened its doors to all, regardless of their way of worship, and accepted them as citizens of independent India. When Tibetans had to flee from their homeland, they were not just given asylum, but every assistance was provided to them by this land of Buddha. In the recent past, India's humanitarian assistance has largely been provided in 3 contexts: conflict, post-conflict, in the immediate aftermath of a natural disaster, and support addressing the challenges of COVID-19. From Operation Rahat in 2015 in Yemen to Operation Ganga 2022 in Ukraine, India has always rushed to the rescue of not just its own citizens, but also nationals stranded in difficult situation. I'm also wanting to mention here what Prime Minister Narendra Modi did under the Vaccine Maitri initiative, which is now a common knowledge. Before I close, I must mention here that not just in the past, but even in the contemporary world, India has been playing its role strictly without sounding condescending or obliging. We consider it as our duty. And simply to understand enormity of India's role, let me share with you what Will Durant had said in his book, a seminal work, The Case for India. Will Durant eloquently mentions, and I quote, India was the motherland of our race and Sanskrit, the mother of Europe's languages. She was the mother of our philosophy, mother through the Arabs of much of our mathematics, mother through Buddha of the ideals embodied in Christianity, mother through the village community of self-government and democracy. Mother India, in many ways, was the mother of us all. As a responsible member of the global family and a civilizational nation with a glorious history of several thousand years, India will continue to play its role in this family. However, the success of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam depends on acceptance of this family relationship by one and all. For any family to hold together, all family members have to pursue the path of democratic functioning, justice, inclusiveness, participation, partnership, and above all, mutuality. Equality of opportunity, equality of security, and equality of dignity, friends, are the three pillars of the family as an institution. Let's hope this conference would motivate all of us think in this direction. Lastly, I must mention here that the theme of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam emerged in India because India symbolizes the spirit of humanity. And it is not just I'm saying because I belong to India. French Indologist Sylvain Lévy endorses this in so many words. Says he, and I quote, from Persia to the Chinese Sea, from the icy regions of Siberia to the lands of Java and Borneo, from Oceania to Socotra, India has propagated her beliefs, her tales, and her civilization. She has left indelible imprints on 1/4 of the human race in the course of a long succession of centuries. She has the right to reclaim the rank that ignorance has refused her for a long time and to hold her place amongst the great nations, summarizing and symbolizing the spirit of humanity. The other name of this spirit of humanity, ladies and gentlemen, is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Thank you very much.